Sorry, my mic was muted. So in today's video, I'll be discussing all about seed starting with my good friend Amir over at Amir's allotment. And so hopefully now you guys could hear me. But I had my mic off, so now I had to switch it on. So hopefully, but welcome everybody who's on to the chat early. Hi, hi, hi. And so let's go ahead and without further ado, welcome Amir into the live stream, and we'll jump straight into everything we need to learn about seed starting. Welcome, Amir.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So Amir is I actually met Amir from Danny over at Danny's allotment gardening or the grow up channel.
That's right.
He actually connected me when we both did a episode together. We were both in an episode featured in the same episode. And I really loved what Amir was doing. And so I decided to have him as a guest here onto the Growing Generations podcast. And so, like I always say, this podcast is all about showcasing gardeners who have passion and enthusiasm towards gardening. And of course, we want to do is just spread our love and our passion for everybody out there who's interested in gardening or food forestry like I have focused on, or regular basic growing of vegetables. And so we want to mainly focus on inspiring other generations to get their hands in the dirt and start growing their own gardens. So I know right now a very hot topic is all about seed starting, especially since it's the most affordable way to get some plants growing, as well as getting the most varieties and the varieties you desire by seed starting. And so, Amir will go ahead and what are some few tips you could give us on seed starting? We'll direct it more for beginner gardeners who are starting their garden. So, what are a few tips you could give them when they're choosing out seeds and planting seeds for the upcoming garden?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, it's always the cheapest option to do this, and very often what you find in the early stages, if you don't get good germination, you can always. What I tend to do is when I sow, I tend to sow in seed trays to start off with smaller seed trays, and then what I would usually do is move them on to larger seed trays. But sometimes what I will also do is just after a few days or give it a week or two, when I start to see the seeds germinating, I would usually, as an insurance policy, sow some more as well. Because to be honest, that way, not only if they do well, and usually they both tend to do well, then the good thing about that usually is that you can then have a succession crop when you put them out in your garden or in your allotment. So that's usually a good idea. Or you get more plants to share with your friends and family if you need to. So it is really it's a really good thing. It's always the cheapest way to do it, because as you start buying from shops, if you buy as plug plants or larger plants, you're obviously going to spend more money. So from a seed packet, and there's so much variety out there as well. That's the thing, to be honest. At this time of year, I really get carried away because I'll go to all the garden centres. I've got enough seeds already. I usually sort them out in January, so I know exactly what I'm going to be sowing, and then I'll go to the shops and I'll just end up buying more. And there's been lots of the YouTube community is great as well, because there's been lots of seed swapping with friends, and even locally as well. We tend to do that quite a bit in my neighborhood. We have like a usual get together with gardening friends, and we'll always seed swap. And even when we have our plants growing on as well, we'll usually swap plants as well. So it's a good thing, especially for a beginner. It's really rewarding as well, that start of when you literally start right from scratch, sifting the soil, getting things prepared, and yeah, that's a really good thing, definitely.
So Jay is actually axing. So I definitely agree with Amir. Definitely when it comes to seed starting for beginner gardeners, you always like what some tips I would always give is grow your heavy hitters. Grow plants you know you're gonna want to grow and you're gonna use in the kitchen, because yeah, there's so many varieties out there, some cool rare varieties you want to try out, but you may not like them and you don't want to dedicate so much space to the that rare or that new variety you're trying
Absolutely.
out. And so just in case you might not like it, you don't want to have so much space dedicated to it, and that there goes that space for the end of the season. So you want to go ahead and dedicate a small portion of your veggies or your new varieties to that small little area. So just in case you don't
Yeah.
like them, it's not a big waste. So
Yeah.
Jay is
Yeah.
asking, do you make your own seed starting medium? Do you have a recipe or two for us?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I would love to. And as I start progressing with gardening, I would really like to do that in terms of in my allotment garden. I usually do try and make my own compost and add lots of different ingredients. What I can really, usually it's what I just, it's just plant matter, any food waste, that sort of thing. But at the moment, all I tend to do is just buy peat-free compost from a garden centre, usually a good quality one, and sometimes I'll add a little bit of perlite just for keeping the moisture and just mix that together. And I really like to, before I actually mix it with a little bit of perlite, I tend to just sieve it as well, just to give it a really fine, just to give those seeds a really good start. It's always the main thing. Just make sure the texture is really good, nice and fine, ready for them. But usually, to be honest, most seeds are quite forgiving. So even if you either sow them a little bit too deep, like tomatoes, they still come up. They will eventually come up. So and if they don't, you've just got to just make sure you don't see sort of sow them too deeply in the actual trays. But yeah, hopefully my plan is as I start progressing, especially in my garden, I would really love to definitely start making more of my own compost. There is a local like a coffee roasting place that usually have a lot of coffee. It's the chaff from the coffee beans. And I've recently been adding a lot of that into my compost, and it does break down and very quickly. So that's a good sort of brown to add to the matter in the compost bin.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to seed starting medium, the two main things you want to have is some type of beginner fertilizer that's organic
Yeah.
and very fluffy aerated soil. Because what
Right.
I realized is a recipe I like to use, or something tend to use, is I would get, like how what Amir would do is I would use perlite. I would use my regular soil, which is my main growing medium, and then I would add earthworm castings to it because that's another
Okay.
source of rich, good vitamins for the plants to grow off. And they're not so overpowering because if you put strong chemically fertilizers, they could kill your baby seedlings because it's just too overpowering. It'll burn the delicate, tender roots. So, what I like to do is to feed them, but with the most delicate fertilizer I can find out there. Although earthworm castings is like black gold for us, and it's
Yeah.
super rich and it's super nutrients. However, it's not too strong to the point where it will kill your babies. If not, it will slowly feed them and gradually. And so when it comes to growing by seed or the medium, always make sure you get a growing medium that is well sifted out, that there's no big pieces of mulch or debris. You want to make sure all that is clear. You want to have good aerated, fluffy soil that it's not really chunky because anything can stop those seeds from germinating, and you don't want that happening. So you want to make sure you get a good, well-draining, aerated soil that is great for any seed starting. Of course, it could differ depending on the varieties or the species of plants you're growing from seed. However, that's just the thumb of rule. You always want to go with organic stuff to feed your plants and
Perfect.
well-draining soil as well. And so another thing I wanted to discuss about is the easiest plants to start from seed, because I know not all seeds are super easy to start from a seed. For example, like lavender, that's already like pro. If you grow
Right.
lavender from seed, that's like your
Right.
thing,
Right.
because lavender is one of the hardest seeds to grow from seed. But there's other easier ones out there. So, is there any from the ones you've grown, Amir, that are the easiest to grow in your opinion, especially for anybody who is wanting to dive into seed starting? It could be beginner gardeners. It could be a gardener out there who's done this for years but just wants to start seed starting and wants to have more success rate. What are some of the most veggies or greens or any plant out there that are the easiest to start from seed?
Yeah, it's a really good question. To be honest, I do find onions generally are very easy to sow from seed. Tomatoes are very good. They're usually fine to get started. So tomatoes are usually a really good beginners thing to sow. Lettuce as well, lots of different types of lettuce usually tend to be quite easy. They come up quite quickly. You've just got to make sure that the soil is regularly, like the moisture is there really. You've got to keep them watered once you start seeing them there. But then there are things like melons and cucumbers that like the soil a little bit more dry. Now I learnt this lesson last year, because I found that some of them were starting to die off, and then some of the other YouTubers that noticed that I might have been over watering them a little bit. So I do find that things like melons and cucumbers are like the soil to be a little bit more dry, but definitely tomatoes, lettuce, and definitely the onions. I find always are good, and they come up quite quickly as well. There are certain varieties you might find that might not and need a little bit more time. Chili peppers as well tend to do quite well, although for us here in the UK, they will need some heat, so they won't just germinate without some heat. But usually people use like heat mats or growing lights, and chilies again seem to do quite well if you've got the heat. But if you haven't in the UK, I would definitely say for now your onions just indoors you can sow them. And flowers, I mean, the most easiest one is always the sunflowers. Very easy, very easy to grow, and regularly come up. So yeah, I would say for flowers, definitely the sunflowers, easy and fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For another one, when it comes to seed starting, I always find that the biggest seeds germinate better and quicker. For example, anything like a summer squash, a winter squash, anything that has a bigger seed will
Yeah,
germinate within 2 to 3 days, and they are most likely to have a better successful rate than anything else. However, there is some small seeds that can grow very successfully out there, like tomatoes, peppers, zinnias are really grow as well, cosmos, and those seeds are pretty small, but they still produce and grow very abundantly in the garden. And so it's just seemingly that the bigger seeds do have a better success rate when it comes to seed
mhm,
starting. However, not all small seeds are super difficult. And so definitely consider and search up which ones are the ones that you want to grow the best, and start off with some of the ones that are the most easiest to grow, that you will know that you'll have a high successful germination rate.
yeah,
And so you want to make sure you knock those out the park first, because they will be quick and easy and be within a few weeks or months, you'll have something to harvest in the garden. So definitely consider that when it comes to seed starting or planning your seeds for the upcoming season. Another thing that I know when it comes to questions, when it comes to purchasing seeds, there is dozens and hundreds of seed companies out there for you to choose from that you might not know what to choose. I know the companies can differ from here in Southern Florida or in the United States from over there in the UK. And so, what are some seed companies you could recommend from anybody who's looking to purchase seeds in your area?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the UK, if you go to the shops, you usually get the well-known companies, really. But I do find a lot of the times I use companies like Real Seeds, which are online, and also I find King Seeds as well. There's a company called Kings, and I just find even we have some of our German supermarkets as well, that do seeds a lot cheaper, like Lidl, and again they're really cheap but really reliable. I mean, I find I've not had anything that hasn't germinated. So yeah, you've always got to keep an eye on the dates on the packets as well, just to ensure that they are this year's seeds ready for this year, because sometimes some shops will still have older seeds that are there, and you might have some sporadic germination, but usually most of the companies are quite reliable.
I definitely agree as well. When it comes to here in the United States, we have lots of companies that will ship both online, but we
Yeah,
also have lots of local seed companies as well. And so locally, I know you'd probably look for your Bonnie seed starts or your Burpee. That's mainly what you'll see in your local big box stores that are sold locally. However, online, there is so many seed companies out there to you to choose from. And so one of the many seed companies I would recommend. So the top notch one would be Plant Good Seed Company. That's one of my favorite ones because they
right.
focus on sustainable plants you could grow. For example, they mainly focus on what are like grains, rare types of um, veggies, certain fruits. And so I would definitely pay a visit to Plant Good Seed Company. Jay, if you can link that into the um, Live chat. That's one of my personal favorites. Plant Good Seed. Another one of my favorite one is Baker Creek. They are an heirloom seed company. They
Right.
are prolific. They sell multiple different rare seeds for you to choose from. So that would be your companies to choose from for your trial out varieties. Anything if you're looking for more bigger basic vegetables, I'd probably do Pine Tree Garden Seeds. I'd also do survival garden seeds. Those are where your most general basic vegetable seeds to grow. And survival garden seeds will give you great quantity for great pricing as well. And all of these seed companies will sell their or ship their seeds out within a few days, which is really good. So I
That's good.
definitely agree that always what you would look for is reviews as well as how many people in the garden industry would recommend them. If they're
Yeah.
recommended by multiple gardeners, you know they have to be good. But if they are not a known company, their reviews are very low, their purchases are very low, that's probably a sign of not purchasing from there and looking or going a different route. So seeds is very, very delicate because the germination rate has to be high. They have to provide lots of varieties for you to choose from. It's just
Sure.
go for companies that are well known out there. Although they might be more on the pricier side, they will be very good in the garden as well because you'll be able to save the seeds that you purchased. So when it comes to seed starting, I know here in South Florida, we're able to seed start all year round. We're able to grow whatever we want whenever the time we desire because we
Mhm,
have an all year round growing season. However, I know for an Amir's occasion, there is a
mhm.
specific time frame you have to be starting your seeds to get them acclimated and then plant them out onto the garden, which is more of an ideal generic overview because that's where colder climates start off. So, Amir, what is the ideal time you would start your seeds, as well as what would you do to start your seeds, whether it be indoors, outdoors, etc.?
Mhm. It depends on what you're sowing. I mean, this time of year now, during the sort of towards the end of December and early January, we sow our onions because it will take quite a long time for the seeds to start the seedlings to grow, and then you would pot them on. So things that need a longer growing season, like the garlic as well. Although I we plant our garlic directly out in the winter and give it a nice long growing season, ready for when we harvest it in sort of late July, early August. So there are it depends on what you're sowing really. I do find this year what I found a lot as well because I sometimes I start off really passionate and I'm sowing lots of seeds and getting really excited about growing and putting things out. I then start it can start getting a bit overwhelming towards March, April time when you're juggling with the seeds and also planting things outside. So this year I did get a bit lazy towards the summer when I was planting things outside. And what I decided to do, I was direct sowing a lot of my seeds, especially my flowers, like all the annuals, like cosmos and the cornflowers and I think zinnias as well. There was daisies, poppies, all of the annuals really. And so what I tend to do as well is I do direct sow quite a lot as well. The nasturtiums. So anything that I was using as a companion plant, like the nasturtiums and the marigolds, I was actually directly sowing them out in my garden. And that was great too, because it was nice when I'm out there just looking to see how they're doing. And they all come up really well. They did really well. We had a funny year this year a little bit because it was quite warm early on, and then we had quite a wet summer, and it was cooler than the year before. But again, I've got a greenhouse as well, so there are certain things that I keep, like my melons. This year was my first time growing melons, and from once I transplanted them from because I've got at home here I have like a conservatory, like a sunroom where I start most things off and then I'll move things into my greenhouse and then from my greenhouse I then shift them out into the garden. But this year what I was doing quite a bit. But yeah, once I did that with my melons, I grew my melons in the greenhouse on my allotment, and they did really well. And my tomatoes and the peppers as well did really well in the greenhouse. I don't have a massive growing space in my greenhouse; it's not very big. Ideally, I would like to have a bigger greenhouse and definitely get a polytunnel at some point because that would be great. I might do that in my garden here at home this year eventually at some point because it would be nice to just have more growing space. But yeah, I do find that it's never too late, even if you feel later on in the season that you you've not planted, you've not sown your seeds, but you can always direct sow. even with some veg as well. Like the courgettes, you can usually quite easily direct sow them as well, and they always do catch up with the rest in the garden. You just need to then hope for the good weather and for the rain, or keep them well watered. But yeah, you can always do that as well. Direct sowing is again something which I sometimes do as a little bit of an insurance policy as well, just in case something might not transplant very well. So I direct sow near the same bed. I do that with my French beans as well. So I'll put the beans out and get them started, just in case we might get birds that might start picking at the seedlings. I usually then plant my beans out there as well as an insurance policy, and they always come up. So it's great. It's great to do that as well. But yeah, direct sowing as well is always something that I think I'll be doing more of that again this year, because it worked so well last year, with especially with my flowers.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. When it comes to seed starting, as it's very hard, or one of the thing is you have to adapt or work with your environment, because I know there's a lot of animals and stuff like that that will eat your seeds. And so one of the things I really focus on is direct sowing, because I'm able to not grow them in pots, because lots of the birds or animals that visit my garden know that whatever's in a pot is most likely a seed and they'll take
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
However, my rule of thumb is whenever you're direct sowing something or you're planting something in a pot is to plant more than one seed to assure yourself that something will grow. Because yeah, there, although it might say, oh yeah, we have a 90% germination rate, etc., there's still that 10%, or there's still that
Yeah.
percent that's there that might not germinate.
Yeah.
And so to assure yourself that there will be something growing in that pot, plant more than one or two
Yeah.
seeds in a pot. If it's a big seed, plant two seeds. If it's a more smaller type seed, I would probably recommend growing up until three in a pot. And if all three of them grow, just thin them out or separate them into individual pots when they get bigger. So Jay asks, Amir, did you have to adapt your gardening for the excessive wet weather?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, luckily, I last year I also made like a polytunnel, so I was able to sometimes what I can then do is cover some of my crops. If I mean, usually I use that more to sort of protect them from sort of frost more than anything. Usually with the rain, I'm quite lucky, because where I am on my allotment is our soil is really, really good. We've got really good, well draining soil, and it's really gritty as well. And unlike some parts of the UK, and this is why you'll see a lot in when you look on YouTube, you'll see a lot of gardeners preferred the no dig method, because again sometimes it's also because they I mean it's a good thing to do, but also it helps, especially if you have clay soil, because you don't want things to literally just be sat there in water. And I'm really lucky in that sense, because I've had floods this year as well already, but the ground is so good and well draining that the water tends to clear very quickly. Also what I also did this year a lot, what I found was when the even well actually yeah towards the winter months, for example, my dahlias I've not lifted them this year. Again, you'll see that a lot in the UK, where a lot of gardeners will either lift their dahlias and remove them from the ground because they don't want them to just sit in soil. But I tend to leave mine in the ground. I've also my gladioli. So I leave some of my bulbs, the plant bulbs and dahlias, I leave them in the ground, because I just mulch the whole area to make sure that they've got some protection from frost. But other than that, I just tend to leave them there. And this year's a bit of an experiment, because it'll be my second year in this allotment garden. So I'll be able to have a look to see if things are okay, and whether a lot of the dahlias have come back. But I have noticed some that were planted the year before came back with that method. So I decided just leave them in the ground. So it's a good thing to have. I suppose you get to know your environment. And once you know what sort of garden and what sort of environment you have, it might not work for some plants. It might work really well for some plants. I know I don't quite. I know when we saw your garden and pictures of your garden, Emmanuel, you had these like banana groves, and I absolutely love that. Like all the banana trees I have got here in my garden at home. I've got some. They're more like ornamental banana trees. So they will flower and fruit, but they're not really edible. But they do grow as tall, and they grow like a banana tree. And I've got this year again. I've not. Sometimes people would either protect them here, or take them out of the ground and actually put them in a safe place and then plant them back out. But again, this year I've left them in the ground, and I've not even protected them. All I've done is just mulch the base, and I've been a little bit lucky because we've not really had much of a harsh winter this year, and I can already see they're already starting to grow at the top. So I'll hopefully get all the banana trees next year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like in this top corner of me right here, this is a banana
Yeah,
tree. This is a banana
yeah,
tree. It's
that's
just the
it.
bananas
Yeah,
are covered because of the videos that are over it. However, banana trees super prolific down here, and I know
yes,
with a lot of gardeners, what they do is whenever a hard frost is about to arrive, or when it arrives, they cut all their stalks back and they heavily mulch them to keep some humidity and heat trapped in there,
right.
and that ideally would work very very well. I've heard some people, or what they would do is they sometimes would harvest pups and keep them inside, or they
Yeah,
would harvest the
yeah,
entire tree and keep them inside. It's just banana trees are can be a little bit difficult or iffy in areas that get really cold. That's why
right.
here in South Florida, I'm really blessed to have this climate because we're able to grow well over 5,000 different varieties of trees or
Wow.
species,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
does not include the branches of specific varieties of each tree. So
well,
5,000 is just generically like overview, like bananas, avocados, mangoes, but we're not breaking them down into the specific varieties. But
right.
there's hundreds of thousands of varieties that we're able to plant and enjoy here in Southern Florida. And so that's one of the things I'm really happy
Amazing.
about because we're able to experiment and grow lots of the cooler stuff down here, that I know lots of people like Amir can't grow
Mhm.
because they have to do a whole bunch of stuff to take care of them and have them regrow
Yeah,
next year.
yeah,
And some
yeah,
people, to avoid that work, they just don't grow them. And
yeah.
so, like with me, one of the plants we suffer with is hydrangeas. I love
Oh, okay. Yeah,
hydrangeas. I love, love, love hydrangeas. They have to be one of my
yeah,
favorite floral plants. Like I've
yeah,
have 7 of them in the garden. However, they're suffering because they don't like so much heat. They need a certain
yeah.
period of cold temperatures to bloom. They
I
like
see what you mean.
certain conditions, and so our my hydrangeas currently are not looking the best. However, they do bloom, but not those huge head-sided blooms. If not, they're small, little periwinkle type flowers.
Oh, right,
And so a little heads up is I have a collaboration coming up with First Edition Plants,
right.
and they came out with a new variety of hydrangea called Eclipse. It is super, super cool. It's a dark, almost black foliaged
Oh,
hydrangea
wow, wow.
with
Yeah,
bright pink, almost red flowers. And so
wow.
imagine that contrast. And so
That is
I
really cool.
was, they were like, "We want to send you one." I was like, "Gladly." And so
Yeah.
probably expect the video to come out ending March, beginning of April, around there when they ship out the plant to me. And so
Oh,
I'm
great.
really
Yeah.
excited to try that out. And I
Oh,
know
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I really am. My mum absolutely loves hydrangeas. Like, she has so many in her garden. She likes the plants with the big blooms. So peonies, hydrangeas, rhododendrons. She has all of them going in her garden. But yeah, that's amazing. I'd really love to see that. I'll definitely be watching that. That sounds brilliant.
yeah, like it'll be going around that time. That's when the video should be released. But once I heard of this new variety, because it's a new variety for 2024, and so it's a new breed, and I've never seen a hydrangea in that contrast before.
No,
So
no.
I was like, yeah. And I know here in Publix, which is one of our local stores here, they have these huge microphylla hydrangeas that are
Right.
bigger than my head, and they're
Yeah.
running for $30. And I really wanted one, but I had to keep my hands back because I know that if I bring it, it's only gonna look pretty for a few days and then it's gonna die,
Yeah.
or probably
Yeah.
it's gonna look kind of iffy. So I know. So look, Jay actually posted a link for the big leaf hydrangea from First Edition, or Bailey's Nurseries. That's another one. It's really, really pretty. I absolutely love it. And so, yeah, I love hydrangeas. And
Do you have do you have like alkaline soil, or do you keep them in pots?
so with
Or
mine, I keep mine's in pots. I haven't had my soil tested, but ideally I
right,
think I have
right,
more
yeah,
acidic soil.
I see, yeah,
But Yeah, I grow mines in pots more likely because I able to control the acidity, the soil type,
Yeah,
the
that's
watering, the
it.
fertilizing.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly.
able to do with them. And so I wish I could grow panties. Oh my god, I wish I
Yeah,
could grow panties.
yeah,
I really want
yeah,
panties so badly, but I can't because
yeah.
they die. And if I successfully grow one, that is like wow.
They
But
they are they're amazing, amazing flowers. I remember my mom when I moved house, she gave me like some yeah, like the tubers for a peony, and I planted them. And yeah, they can be a little bit like they tend to. You've got to make sure you don't plant them too deep, because otherwise they'll keep. You'll get the foliage every year, but they won't flower. And but the first year I had one flower, and then the year after I had more, and then suddenly they just take over, and they're just amazing, full of blooms, and brilliant cut flowers as well. Absolutely amazing.
yeah, I love panties. I always use the cut flowers here that I saw at the local store. However, I can't grow them. So Danny's
Right,
actually here
right.
from the Grow Up channel. So welcome, Danny, to the live
Oh,
stream.
hi, Danny. Hi,
And so,
Danny. I'll be joining Danny tomorrow, by the way.
oh,
So,
great, Jay, if you could link that, that'd be amazing. Um, but he was actually the one who connected me and Amir for this live stream, and he was
yeah,
actually a
yeah,
guest last Wednesday. So if you want to check that out, we discussed about garden preparation. That was our last episode, episode 2. Like we're a new streaming podcast. This is only our episode number 3, seed
yeah.
starting. And so towards the end, when we wrap up the live stream, which should be in a few minutes, I will discuss about our next new guest who will be next week. So
Brilliant.
when it comes to seed starting, there has to be preparation. There has to be. I know you
Yeah.
can't just plant seeds in the ground or you can't just throw any variety out there.
Mhm.
You have to prepare. So,
Yeah.
what are some final tips or some tips you may have, Amir, for those who are like, okay, I bought these seeds, but I might not be able to grow them all in this year. So, which one should I start off with? Which one should I knock out the park first, etc. So, what are some tips and some advice you might give to those who purchased a lot of seeds, but they don't know where to start off with? So, what are some tips
Mhm.
you could give
Mhm. Yeah.
for kind of like a beginner point for them?
Yeah. For a beginner, like we mentioned, start off always sowing in the trays, so that, because sometimes the risk with direct sowing outside is you might just sow them a bit too deep, and you'll just find that they'll either come up but they'll just take longer, or they might not come up at all. So yeah, plant them in trays. When the seedlings are nice and healthy and looking really well in their little cells, you can then move them on to either a bigger pot or a slightly bigger container to grow them on a little bit, so you get a nice strong healthy plant. Always check the roots, so that because if the plant's got really nice strong roots, then you know once you're going to plant them out in their place in the garden that they've got a good chance of taking to the soil and doing well. So the roots have to be really strong. They should come up to the bottom of the pot, and even coming out a little bit if they're a little bit, um, make sure they're not too pot bound, but as long as you can see that the roots, you can see them from the bottom of the pot, it's usually a great time. It will give you an indication that they're ready to be planted out in the garden. And then just find, as well, you've got to really find out the type of plant or vegetable that you're growing, that you're going to put them in the right location as well, because obviously some flowers won't like it too shady, or it could be too exposed, the area. So you've got to really look at the instructions to find out what the plant likes, and what the vegetables like. Vegetables usually in full sun are fine. You need lots of light and heat. But then yeah, you can just plant them out into the garden. Just prepare that area really well. Some people sometimes will sometimes add some ingredients to the soil where they're going to plant them out, just so that the roots take. You can add some supplements to help the roots sort of get a little bit stronger and feed. But usually, to be honest, sometimes you don't always need that, because you would want those roots to actually start searching themselves and going down to the ground for the moisture. So don't
Okay.
overwater, but water them in nicely, and then you just keep an eye on them and see how they go. They might sulk a little bit sometimes. Like I find the lettuce, when I put them out, they usually, initially look really, they look like they're sulking and feeling really sorry for themselves, and then eventually they'll just spring back up. So don't panic if you notice that. It is normal to start off with.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to seed starting, garden preparation is very ideal, especially for beginner gardeners, because you just don't want to throw seeds in the garden and just call it a
Yeah,
day. because that's not a recipe for success. So something I would do is exactly what Amir described: start by pots, start off with the easier seeds like what we discussed earlier, and just it's all moving forward from there, because you don't want to give up midway, because then your seeds will die on you. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure you go full forward and treat those seedlings like babies. They really require lots of care and help for them to succeed. So a question that Danny here left was, how are your pink daffodils coming along?
Yeah, so at the moment they're only just starting to show a little bit. So I've put them in pots, and I've only just noticed that they're just peeking out now. So it might be a slightly later variety, but all I've done so far is just give them one feed of that beetroot water. We're hoping what we were doing was hoping that by feeding them the beetroot infused water, which turns a really deep red, is that the bulb should absorb some of that, and we might get pink flowers. So that's what we're hoping for. Um,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. So we're hoping to turn our daffodils pink that way.
I was so
So
confused.
it's a little bit of an experiment, really, to be honest. And so, but at the moment, the bulbs are growing well, but they haven't done very well yet. So let's
Yeah,
see what happens.
I was really confused. I was like, "There's such thing as a pink daffodil? I've never heard of these." But that's a
Yeah,
good experiment. I would really love to
yeah,
keep
yeah. We're doing a
like
bit.
updated on how that one goes, because that I've never heard of flowers being dyed by mixing food coloring into water, and they absorb
Yeah.
it and they transmit that color to the petals. So that's definitely a fun experiment. I would love to hear how that ends up going.
Yeah, yeah,
So
we were hoping a natural way really that with the because beetroot is so concentrated, isn't it? And it gets really red. So Danny's trying it as well, and we've got some other YouTube gardeners as well that are trying it. So who knows if it works this spring? We might all start seeing pink daffodils popping
pink
up everywhere. I
daffodil
really hope it works. I
called
really am
beetle.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. I wish I could hop onto that trend as well. However, I can't
Yeah.
grow certain bulbs, including daffodils. I probably, if I would grow bulbs, it would probably be Oriental or Asiatic lilies. That's probably what
Oh,
I
I
would
see what you
probably
mean.
do.
Yeah.
So I have to see. Yeah, Jay just posted the video link of the pink daffodil experiment. So make sure you guys go check that out. Whoever watches this afterwards. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this live stream here. We covered everything you guys needed to learn about seed starting for beginner gardeners as well as for current gardeners as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us or leave anything in the comments, and we'll gladly answer them for you guys. Make sure to go check out Amir's channel over at Amir's Allotment. He's an amazing
Thank you.
avid gardener over there in the UK. So make sure you go check him out, and definitely keep a eye posted for that pink daffodil, because that's
Yeah.
I would really love to see how that comes out, as well as follow Danny from the Grow Up channel. He's also really good as well. He's also located in the UK, so definitely
Yeah.
consider giving them a follow. Thank you again, Jay, for being an amazing moderator and joining us today on this live stream, and thank you for everybody who is on. So thank you so much, Amir, so much for joining us. It was a big pleasure having you onto the live stream, and I can't wait to have you as a guest again to discuss a different topic.
Oh, thank you for having me, Emmanuel. It's been great. It's been great fun, and yeah, just good luck with the channel. And I hope this takes off because it's such a good idea. It's a good idea to have gardeners from all over the world just share their experience, and it's a great platform. So I'm sure this is going to grow from strength to strength. I'm sure.
Thank you. So next week we will have Freddie from Freddie's Allotment joining
Brilliant.
us on the live stream. So make sure you guys tune in for next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, for when we have Freddie and we discuss all of things about beginner or young gardeners in the garden industry. Thank you all so much for joining. And remember, we're growing generations by generations. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.